Holy crap, that's the coolest thing ever.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Yes, we're just 3 episodes away from the season finale of American Gods, and I'm here to help break down the episode and point out some of the cool things you may have missed along the way. So put on your Ted Nugent bandana, because here we go. The episode begins backstage at what appears to be some sort of vaudeville show. These types of shows featured a variety of entertainers, like mimes, and they were popular from about the 1890s to 1930s. And we get our first American Gods musical number. Check out the background of the set, which is a rendition of the Great Hall in Valhalla. Mr. Wednesday even announces that the name of the hall they're in is the Regis, which is derived from an Icelandic codex which holds many Old Norse poems. It's a fitting name since this theater is in the business of song and dance. And of course we have Wednesday's ravens, Munin and Hugin, watching over. We then get our first glance of Donar the Great, who we'll later find out is actually Thor. He carries Thor's hammer Mjolnir. We also get a glimpse of Miss Columbia, decked out in her American flag costume, Columbia deriving from Christopher Columbus, who discovered America, although it was actually the Vikings hundreds of years before him. After the show ends, Wednesday is congratulated by the crowd, but the most interesting thing is this mysterious man, who we'll later find out is Technical Boy. We then have a few Nazis arrive, and yes, Nazis were more public in America before World War II, so it isn't out of the realm of possibility. But it was all a memory inside Wednesday's head while he dreams. They're outside Gomorrah, a mall built over the dwarven center of power. Last episode mentioned Sodom, and it's interesting that they now bring up Gomorrah, since both were cities mentioned in the book of Genesis renowned for their sin and vice. They're here to see Dvalin, who they need to reforge the runes on Odin's spear, Gungnir. Fun fact, I used to live near this actual mall, and it even has a little theme park inside it too. The closing of the mall is also a metaphor for the old gods slowly dying away. They haven't even gotten rid of the banner that says the future is 1989. But the most important part of this scene is when Wednesday tells Shadow he reminds him of his son, Donar the Great, and we'll get into that in a bit. Back at Blackbriar, Mr. World has a cool little diagram depicting, quote, small attacks that may light the spark. He's likely referring to events that will sway more people to his side. He then has a chat with new media telling her a cryptic message that victory requires a power of breadth and scope. She says she'll up her game and turns into a cat emoji? Ugh, this character. Back at the Regis, Mr. Nancy works backstage, telling Columbia she's gotta go on. He also has some deal with her that he gets 20% of her worshippers. But Columbia is busily oiling up Donar, who says that he can't run away with her to California because Wednesday needs him. But Columbia says Wednesday is just using him, and she alludes to her being the Wild West and Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny being the idea that the United States was destined by God to expand across the continent. No wonder she wants to go west to California. In the main theater, Wednesday tries to make nice with Technical Boy by giving him his best showgirls, Isamba and Gifun. I couldn't find any details on Isamba, but Gifun was the ancient Norse goddess of agriculture and fertility. Technical Boy isn't enjoying the hospitality and shows tremendous hubris in the face of Wednesday, who remarks that he may be gaining followers now, but what happens when his technology becomes obsolete? Foreshadowing his eventual demise when new media and Mr. G take over. This scene also sets up what could be Technical Boy joining the side of the old gods. Donar shows off his strength, again with more allusions that he's Thor, with the girls unable to lift his sacred hammer. Hammer. As Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries plays in the background. While Wednesday keeps tabs on Tech Boy, a man named Manfred inquires about Donar. But Wednesday wants to know why he wears the Angle Cross of Filfot on his armband. The Angle Cross of Filfot was used centuries before the Nazi version of the swastika, adorning sword hilts and funerary urns, largely a religious symbol. Manfred says he's with the Friends of New Germany, which was an actual organization in the United States in the 1930s, which sought to bolster support abroad for the Nazi Party. Back at the Dead Mall, Sindri says that Dvalin isn't capable of forging the runes. The strength to etch such runes of war would require great power, which only the leather jacket worn by Lou Reed can provide. At the Regis, Manfred wants to sponsor Donar for the World Weightlifting Competition, which Wednesday thinks is a great idea. Donar will be elevated to his former glory, which in turn will elevate the entire pantheon of old gods. We also see how much sway Odin has in his son's decision, while Columbia isn't too pleased. Nazis frighten her. It's also interesting here to note how they're setting up Donar as a sympathetic character who dreams of running off with Columbia, telling her that once he wins, they can move to California and do whatever they want. Of course, this does not have a happy ending. We then get another musical number as Columbia sings about not being fenced in, a metaphor for the expansion of America through the Wild West. But it begs the question, what happens to Columbia when there's no more places to conquer, no more lands to explore? Bishop Hammersmith over here buys Lou Reed's jacket for $7,500, but it's all a ruse. Shadow barges in posing as Secret Service, taking in Wednesday for using fake bills. And of course the jacket is now evidence, so they walk away scot-free. In a back room filled with creepy mannequins, Shadow interrogates Wednesday about his son. We learn that he was indeed Thor, but he went by his given name, Donar. Of particular interest is how Wednesday says Shadow reminds him of Donar, that they share similar characteristics. But the death of Donar is too painful for Wednesday to bring up. My guess is that this all links to why Wednesday hasn't revealed himself to be Shadow's father. He could have distanced himself from him in order to avoid being hurt the way he was when he lost Donar. But at the same time, as I theorized a few episodes ago, he could also not be revealing it in order to protect Shadow. We then get a flurry of newspaper and radio ads depicting Donar's strength and eventual rise to fame. It confirms that this is 1934 and that he seems to be, quote, harnessing the power of the gods. I also like how the articles themselves are written in Latin. Manfred talks to Donar about a proposal which Donar isn't too pleased about. Manfred wants Donar to purposely lose his matchup with a German competitor. Mr. Nancy appears, and let me first say that I am loving Orlando Jones. He's just killing it this season. He tells Donar the story of a young boy born to a world where men could not rule. So this boy traveled through time to find a world where men could. He made a deal with man, exchanging fire from the gods for the ability to rule, which the men then used to find his homeland and destroy it. His own lust for power destroyed the very thing he loved. And that's what Nancy is getting at. Donar made a deal with the Germans and is now paying the price for it, just like Nancy did, who was the boy in that story. Dvalin is given the sacred power of Lou Reed and now, given the strength, is able to reforge the runes, claiming that it's now ready to be healed. As soon as this happens, the alarms at Blackbriar go off, alerting Mr. World that the runes have been etched. He says that things are going ahead of schedule, but that his friends in the valley will be ready. He's referring to Silicon Valley and whatever scheme he has cooked up with Mr. G. Back in the 1930s, Donar decides that after his last show, he's going to move with Columbia to California. He says he's going to pledge himself to her, and I think that distinct use of the word pledge here evokes the Pledge of Allegiance. He's pledging himself to America. Of course, Munid and Hugin are watching. Wednesday introduces Columbia to Technical Boy, who has a proposition to reform Columbia into Our Lady of the War effort. Ever since Lady Liberty came into the picture, Columbia has slowly been losing followers. She'll need this if she's going to survive. And Our Lady of the War effort would be a perfect fit for Miss Manifest Destiny over here, because believing God has chosen America to win the war would be a huge advantage. Now, I also think it's interesting that Libertas, the Roman god of freedom, is brought up again here. A huge emphasis was placed on it in episode 2, and I had the crazy theory that Shadow's mother could potentially be Libertas herself. Check out my episode 2 video if you want to know a little bit more about that. Columbia needs more time to think about it, since she just decided that night she's going out west with Donar, but Wednesday tells her that he left with the Germans, without her, which of course is a lie. He tells her it's time to manifest her own destiny, a cheeky nod to her being the encapsulation of Manifest Destiny. And in the background you can faintly hear America the Beautiful playing. In the alleyway of the Regis, Wednesday confronts Donar, who has decided not to do the championship, instead running off with Columbia. But Wednesday tells him she won't be coming, and they get in one of the coolest scenes of the series. Gungnir and Mjolnir duke it out, with Mjolnir so powerful it shatters Wednesday's spear in half. Seriously, this is the kind of stuff I've been wanting to see in this series since season 1. Gods battling it out, using their weapons and powers. Wednesday is so shocked at how powerful Donar is, stating that it's only a fraction of what's to come. He tells him that power like this you cannot walk away from, but that's exactly what he does. And in 1942, Donar commits suicide, the only death gods can't come back from. Notice the Somewhere in America painted in blood, and the We Can Do It Rosie the Riveter poster, which has been superimposed with the face of Columbia, suggesting that Columbia took Technical Boy's offer and Donar lost the love of his life, hence ending his own. Shadow asks if Donar rode with the Valkyries to the afterlife, and Wednesday isn't sure, but judging by his face, it isn't likely. Then the episode ends with Wednesday singing one of the best-known American songs of the Great Depression, Brother Can You Spare a Dime, in what seems like his now run-down theater. With Donar gone, he has lost his show and must move on to something new. So where does that leave us with only 2 more episodes left in the season? At the time of writing this, the promo for episode 7 hasn't yet been released, but it feels like we're getting closer to our big season climax. With Gungnir almost ready and Mr. World's plans underway, I'm predicting some future god deaths, the reappearance of Technical Boy, and Shadow's true heritage to be revealed. We also still have Laura's resurrection and her attempt to find the special blood infused with love. I'm really enjoying all the new gods we're being introduced to, and excited to see where this season takes us. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and stay tuned because I'll be coming out with a Game of Thrones breakdown sometime tomorrow. And come check me out on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.